I'm Daniel Montgomery from Gold Derby here with Empire of Light composers Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. It's a love story set in and around an English movie theater during the 1980s, and there's a really tender, delicate quality to the music in the film, I found. What were your initial thoughts about the music when this film initially came your way?
Well, the process of this film started way before the camera was picked up. Sam got in touch with us, which was incredibly flattering. And what started was a kind of probably 4-month conversation that was Zooms every couple of weeks, sometimes multi-hour, where he invited us into the process and he shared some very personal stuff about what inspired the script, which we knew the stakes were high. This was a very personal film to him. And we kind of just got to know each other, know the story, and sort of towards the end of it, he was sending us photos of the place and as they were building the cinema, etc. We started experimenting with some compositions that were kind of world building, trying to establish what is going to make this story and this music, like, to digress, what one's swinging for, I always think, is here's a story. It's a unique story. In this case, a very personal story to Sam. The music, the great scores to me are the ones where when you look at the film, you think of the music, and when you hear a bit of the music, you're reminded of the film. They live together as one piece. The music is part of the DNA of the film. And we kind of found the parameters of that world during the process, not the score, but the instrumentation and the backdrop.
And what it felt like,
Yeah.
the kind of shape of it, what space it was going to take up. And to your point, it's a sweet and at times sweet, but personal, emotional tale. And we felt the music needed to not be showy, not overwhelm, not be attention grabbing, but really support that story and help deliver it.
And it's set in the 1980s. Did that time period influence any of the musical choices, or did this feel like it was a timeless kind of film that you were composing?
The time period really didn't come into play too much for what we were doing, because we knew there were needle drops that were very specific choices of Sam's that would do any additional lifting in terms of informing you what era it was. The music, for our score, the time period when it took place didn't have much to influence. It was more, it felt more like a timeless story. And when we started landing on it feeling like a piano based score, we didn't think too much about the era too much after that.
And what about the story made you feel like that piano was should be the basis of the score?
Well, quite honestly, as Atticus mentioned, what we tend to do initially is do a lot of typically any new project we get involved in, as we're kind of feeling out what the score might be like, we'll tend to send improvisations to the director of, here's things that kind of feel to us like it might be the world of the film. Like, for example, this film, he was still writing the script. We had talked about Margate in the winter time. We'd send a piece, we send a collection of maybe an hour's worth of music, maybe 8 or 10 compositions, ranging from 4 to 20-minute long chunks of stuff that aren't precious. But this feels like what we think of looking out over a gray ocean with snow falling, with that cinema in the background. Kind of feels like this to us. And we find it's easier to give examples rather than trying to describe what something sounds like. And because we can do it fairly quickly, like we'll sometimes set up a mission of today we're going to complete one piece. That's maybe a B or ABC section going back and forth with different levels of tension or arrangement, just to kind of give an idea of what it feels like. And what we do is, the intent of that is to see they'll respond usually, even if it's none of that feels right to me. That tells us, okay, it's not this and that. And what we'll send, sometimes we'll color off the lines, what we think isn't right necessarily, to see if we're being conservative in our take on it. And, the reaction we got from Sam was, oh, when I heard that, I thought about something, and then that just gets logged away, and that piece may never be used or heard of or thought of again, but it informs us. Like in this case, we wound up on piano, to answer your question, because as we got into proper scoring and we became intimately familiar with not only the story, but how he wants to tell the story and what he thinks are the important elements of the story, which was primarily Hillary's journey. It needed, often I'd mock up something on piano with the intention that maybe that gets adapted into something else because it's the instrument I'm most familiar with, or I can be the most expressive on. And it just kind of started landing on it. I don't know how it couldn't be a piano. It's what it felt right. It felt emotionally in the right place. It had the right level of subtlety and vulnerability, and it just felt right. And he was responding to these pieces. And so the piano, and we knew we wanted the score to kind of sit in a place that wasn't, as I mentioned, showy or felt like, hey, listen to me. It needed to kind of just be in there and support for the most part. So being able to have the score anchored by a piano, but around that piano where the piano sits, Sam was very open to something that kind of became less traditional. And if you lean in and listen to what's going on, it kind of makes the piano sit in a place that often can feel a little wondrous, or a little magical, which is what we felt that cinema is in this film. And there's not everything is tangible, and there is a kind of alchemy and magic in that place that we wanted the score to have a little tinge of wonder and unknown. And that became kind of very organically became the blueprint of what we were going to use to help tell the story. And it wasn't from a decision, hey, let's make a piano score. It was just kind of, both camps kind of arrived at that from trying things, and hey, this just feels right, in that scene. So
I think there's an intimacy and a fragility that spoke to the Hillary's journey that one couldn't really imagine another instrument speaking in the same way.
And did you both of you have like a particular composition that ended up in the film that you're especially proud of, that stands out to you?
Well, we just saw the film for the first time with other people at the premiere last night, and it had been 6 weeks or more since I'd last seen the film, and it was what struck me. I teared up a few times, to be quite honest with you. And the process of working on several of the scenes on this was very intense and intimate for us. You know, in particular, one of the most important scenes musically, in our opinion, while Hillary is watching, being there, you know, in cinema and having this kind of revelation of what how powerful cinema can be and redemption, and that's several minutes of just watching somebody watch a movie, you know, where the music needs to perform a pretty significant role. And we had written and arranged 15 different pieces of music by the time we got the one that really worked, because as we learned with Sam, incredibly smart and articulate person, and he knows what he wants to say. And like when you go through a scene with him spotting, there's a very intricate and thoughtful roadmap of what needs to happen emotionally, you know, everything's been considered in the choice of the take, and everything has been thought through, and he knows how he wants it to play. So you know that going into it, we learned the rhythm of when you get the bones of how it's going to work. There's another significant amount of work of adapting and manipulating to get the littlest things changing, you know, that one could say, is that really going to make a difference? If, you know, but then you watch it, yeah, it did, you know. And on this scene I'm talking about in particular, the being there scene, what we do when we're composing is, once we've figured out what tools we're going to use and what instrumentation we're going to use and the process of technique of how we're going to compose and record, then we try to shuttle that off and get lost in the scene and get lost emotionally in tapping into something in us that relates to the thing that's happening, in transcribing that into sound. And that can be tricky, and we're not thinking about what would be a clever melody and how can we tie it back into this. That's for a later time, but we initially need to mine that raw material that has truth and honesty to it, and a meaningfulness where you know it's coming from a authentic place. And that, we found, that's really the only thing we do of true value, is being able to mine that and present it and help tell the story in a beautiful way. That scene in particular, there was lots of going back to the mind of, you know, and we'd play something for Sam and we'd feel confident this is it, and we get yeah, what if, let's try again, you know. And it literally was up to 15 times of, and one in particular, a couple times back, I really felt was the thing, you know. I had tears in my eyes when we wrote it, and we got yeah, it's good. You know? But, and it nearly broke us, and time was running out, and the way, knowing how important that scene was in particular, was all weighing into it. But, you know, it becomes a lesson in letting go of being precious about something, letting go of the frustration, letting go of your love of the piece that isn't going to make it, hitting reset, getting lost back in that scene again. And the piece that wound up in there is better than, you know, he was right. And it was him that pushed us to get to that place. And anyway, that's a long way of saying, I watched it last night, and I was truly affected by it, and proud of what we were able to contribute to that film, which I think is a beautiful film.
Well, I want to congratulate you both on the film and your wonderful music in it. And thank you so much for talking to me about it.
Real pleasure.
Thank you very much.